Now, everyone, let's elaborate a bit on this topic. So let's put our hands together and welcome our speakers. We have Mr. Andrew Lowe, CEO and Executive Director of Crystal International Group, Mr. David Simmonds, Chief Strategy, Sustainability and Governance Official of CLP Holdings Limited, and also, can I please have Ms. Carrie Ng, Head of Sustainable Finance Commercial Banking of Hong Kong. Now, please, let's put our hands together and welcome. Thank you, Carrie, for being the moderator, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this panel discussion. So, technology is always seen as an enabler of sustainability. And today, together with Andrew and David, we would like to explore some of the leading applications of the latest technology in the manufacturing and the energy sector. So first, I would like to turn to blockchain. So I know that in the energy sector, the blockchain technology is often viewed as a potential future backbone, especially in the transaction of buying and selling energy. So I would like to turn to David. David, can you tell us more about the application of blockchain in the energy sector? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Well, blockchain can play a really strong role across a utilities' whole value chain, from grid management, the management of renewable energy certificates, and EV charging. It's got a host of possible end uses and applications. So let me give a couple of examples because I think there's some really good ones out there. Let's start with perhaps just a peer-to-peer electricity trading. It's a way of people who have installed renewable energy in their system to be able to sell easily the excess renewable it's got to other players in the local vicinity. So it does open up a range of potential new customers for that and dynamic pricing. It can also simplify the transaction process as well with smart contracts integrated into the blockchain process as well. Another one is in relation to electric vehicle charging. It's a similar notion. For one of the biggest points of resistance often experienced for EVs take-up is the fear about the range of the vehicle and how easy it will be to charge it. And it's all about the availability and accessibility of charging infrastructure. And blockchain can really play a key role in helping relieve that anxiety by creating a sort of peer-to-peer network as well for vehicle charging. There are certain apps out there already that are on the market that use blockchain in a way, if you like, similar to the Airbnb of vehicle charging infrastructure, matching the charging infrastructure with the people who need to charge. And then another one, which is really, really useful as well, is in the management of renewable energy certificates. Renewable energy trading is entering a bit of a boom period, and in the past, it's been a lot more laissez-faire than it is now. I think it's fair to say the amount of renewable energy certificates sold were based largely on estimates of the power that would be produced by the facility, and and less concern about the provenance of the power as well. Now with blockchain technology, it really allows a much greater confidence over the provenance of the renewable energy, and also real-time and automated recording and awarding of the renewable energy certificates based on the actual output. I could go on, Carrie, but I think you get the point. There are a host of applications for blockchain in the energy sector, which are all relevant to a sustainability picture.
Yes, thank you. And I know that in particular, for example, the renewable energy certificate that you talked about is actually quite widely used for corporates in Hong Kong and China as well. So thank you for all the examples. So now turning to Andrew, in the manufacturing space, do you see any application of blockchain perhaps in future?
Oh, for sure. I think, blockchain, I think, in the sector, there are a few key areas, that could apply in the future. I think one is on the fiber tracing side. I think there's a need, right now to trace the fiber, the fiber from, let's say, cotton or polyester. But let's say cotton, from the farm, which farm is produced, what location is in, which country is in. There's a great need, for blockchain, on the traceability part, So that's one end, but the other end also, I think, kind of what David has mentioned. I think I think there's a need, for the on the. I think to help the traceability on the CO2, for each of the manufacturers, how much CO2 each of the manufacturers are consuming, how much products they are producing. So all these informations can be input in the blockchains, and then all the consumers and all the retailers can use these informations, to trace the CO2 emission, on this end. So there's a huge need, in this sector, in our industry, in these two areas, so there's tremendous use.
Thank you, Andrew. And you touched upon the traceability and the supply chain, which really brings us to our next subject. And I'd like to turn to now around Industry 4.0. So Industry 4.0 is all about making the supply chain more smart. And I would like to come back to you, Andrew. Can you tell us a bit more, especially about Crystal Group? How are you integrating technology and using new technologies to help your company as well as your supply chain to become more green?
Okay. So initially, when we first explored Industry 4.0, we were kind of trying to find, what is the right path to do, back a few years ago. So the more we dig deep into it, the more we see there will be a huge impact, and a huge benefit, in terms of making the company more efficient, but also helping to make the world more sustainable. Basically, the reason is that we see that there are two things we can do, really on the I 4.0 part. One is to have on the data part, we can create a end-to-end data fusion, between amongst the customer, the manufacturer, which is us, and also the supply chain, fabric manufacturers, yarn spinners, accessories producers, etc. So with all these data fusion, data integration, it can help us to make the whole system much more efficient. And on the other end, on the more hardware side, and I think there are a lot of automations, including smart warehouse and also on the factory part, smart factory with automation, 3D printing, a lot of new technologies that we can use to really help the company to help the manufacturer to be more efficient, and then thus improving the carbon emission per unit, reducing the carbon emission per unit, so that could be a huge impact.
Turning back to David, what about in the energy sector? Can you also share with us some of the examples of how you can deploy new technologies to help green and transition the sector?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I think there's three main areas that I would point to. One is a really basic one, that the transition and distribution networks are big supply chains in themselves, and they become a lot more controllable and fault tolerant with digitization of the network. So that's a big benefit in and of itself. But there's a much more fundamental shift in industry being driven by decarbonisation objectives, as we all know. And the shift involves the introduction of renewable energy, which can really challenge the electricity grids, both by the intermittent nature of the power that comes from that renewable energy, but also because of the nature of it being much more distributed than a centralized form of energy that we're used to, and electricity grids have been designed to handle. So this whole I 4.0 range of technologies can really help integrate both the distributed nature and the variability of renewables into the system in a way which doesn't compromise the reliability of the system. So through the use of the IF 4.0 technologies, a range of things, whether it be big data analysis, the sensors that are much more widely installed throughout the networks, or the sort of local market mechanisms that are enabled by the technologies that are being developed. It allows the grid to accept and handle a much higher percentage penetration of renewables, which is great for the environment. And the last area is one that Andrew's already alluded to, and that's its role in energy efficiency. A large chunk of what I 4.0 is about is allowing energy efficiency in buildings and for large energy users. And at CLP, we've developed a Smart Energy Connect platform, for instance, which has a range of IoT-based solutions that can really help residential buildings and industrial locations to be much more energy efficient.
Thank you. So we have heard a lot about existing applications of this new technology. And looking into the future, I would like to turn to each of our panelists to ask you one question. So what is the next one big thing that you see in your industry when it comes to using new technology to further the sustainability agenda? So I'll go to Andrew first.
Oh, okay. So I think circular economy is one of the key areas we can do. I think there are two things we can do here. One is on the fiber side. I think on the fiber side, because actually two main fibers constitute around 75% of the total use of the in the industry. One is on the polyester side, which consumes around a little bit over 50%, of the total fiber use, and the other one is cotton, which is about a quarter of the total fiber use. So right now we see that on the polyester side, I think there's I think they're starting to ramp up the use of recycled polyester. So right now I think on the polyester, I think around 15% of polyester are being recycled. Are using recycled polyester. And the industry is targeting to increase that to 45% by the year 2025. So I think I think the recycled polyester, the recycled fibers, would play a more and more important part in our industry. Cotton, on the other end, is a little bit tougher to recycle at this stage. So I think the industry is studying, new technologies, into how to recycle cotton and also the other fibers. So I think a lot of exciting new innovations are needed, to help us to improve the level of recycle, in the industry. But the other part of the circular economy is also, I think I would say on the water side also. So water, I think fresh water. I think I think more and more of the world are viewing water, fresh water, as a scarce commodity. So right now I think we are recycling around 75% of the water that we use, and which is a huge deal. And I think in the industry, we are looking at technologies that can help us to improve that from 75% probably to around 90%, or there are some technologies right now, but is very expensive, which can be zero water also. So, but anyways, I think as we go along this route, I think reducing the use of fresh water would help the industry tremendously, and help the world to be much more sustainable.
Thank you, Andrew. What about you, David?
Thanks, Carrie. Well, I hate to disappoint you and not rise to the challenge of identifying one. I think the reality is in certainly in the energy sector, there isn't going to be one big thing per se. What it takes, just as it for decarbonising the electricity sector is a whole range of different ingredients, and they all have their role to play. So we don't see there being one form of power generation, renewable energy technology, or the like that will be the answer, the silver bullet, as it were. And same in this area. There's going to be so many different forms of innovation and technology that are going to be needed to help get us to the point of net zero, the objective that the Hong Kong government has set for us in Hong Kong by 2050. In order to do that, decarbonising the power sector is going to be a large step in that direction. But to do so will require not only a whole range of different renewable energy technologies, a whole bunch of applications for blockchain and the sort of internet 4.0 technologies we've been talking about, to add up to the big picture that achieves that pretty grand objective. So I think that is both a boring answer, but also a challenge to us all out there, that each individual step can make a difference and a contribution in its own way, and will be important in ultimately allowing us to achieve that net zero future that we're hoping for.
Yes, indeed, and I think a lot of what both of you said really echoes with me personally as well. So, Andrew, picking up on what you mentioned about water, at HSBC, water and water risk is a subject that we care a lot as well, and the bank has actually invested quite a lot of money, both in terms of research and mitigation around the subject. And, David, you talked about having no silver bullet to resolve the big agenda and then the goals around sustainability, which is very true. And at HSBC, we're working very closely with corporates like yourself, with the public sector, governments, quasi-government agencies, etc., all to come up with solutions, and of course providing the financing that is required as well to develop and innovate some of these new technologies in hopes that we can accelerate the green transition. Well, I'm afraid this is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, David and Andrew, for joining us remotely, and thank you so much for your audience as well for your attention. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie, Andrew, David. That was wonderful.